Okay, had to get on here and share with you some thoughts about drones, with these drones being seen all over New Jersey, etc. Certainly, drones are all over the world, and they're being used in Ukraine extensively as weapons. Uh, so I'm not going to talk about how they're used as weapons or anything like that. More interestingly is how they're being discussed as their UFO kind of drones. We don't know we do not know what these things are. They are as big as cars. They have lights on them. Certainly, they aren't hiding. Aliens really want us to see them badly. Uh, anyway, but I wanted to talk about the history of how we got here, in a way. Uh, you know, we only know what we can imagine, and unfortunately, we can't imagine a lot of things in everyday life. We can't imagine concepts. We can't imagine. Uh, uh, I one time had a contractor who was working on a project, and the project called for a little butt out of a wall, and he couldn't figure out how to do it. He was going to do something that was going to look really poorly, and I had to actually get up and hold some boards so that he could nail them in so that the project would look the way it's supposed to look. He couldn't imagine it. I imagined it. I just imagined how there may be many ways to have done what I've done, possibly, but it was very simple. Adding a 2x4, hey, simple. He couldn't imagine it. Uh, Imagine that you're traveling out west back in the 1800s in a Conestoga wagon, in a wagon train across the middle of the country, across the prairies, and your wagon train stops and to camp out that evening, and a fellow brings out his guitar to play, and what you'd expect to be hearing him play something like "Oh Susanna" or something like that, but instead uh, he rips off Jumpin' Jack Flash. Well, you know, you might find it pleasing, but it was not what you were imagining. You had never heard anything like that before. You could not have conceived of it, but he did it. Or the wagon train pulls into a little town, and you go into the saloon to have a meal or whatnot, and the pianist is playing. Once again, you'd expect him, old Susanna. All the movies play old Susanna in these saloons, it seems. Uh, and then instead of that, he's playing a ragtime melody, which ragtime didn't come about until the next several decades. Or maybe he's playing a big band melody like In the Mood, which was the Glenn Miller big band, with accompanying horns and things. Maybe that's what he's playing. Well, again, you would say, "What? What is this noise?" Well, this is confusing. I like it, but it's confusing. Maybe you'd like it. Maybe you wouldn't. More likely you wouldn't at that point. But so this is common. Uh, you know, we've probably all taken educational courses where it's a subject that we're not familiar with, and you get initially it's just overwhelming. You can't quite grasp what the teacher is talking about, especially if it's something scientific or something like that. It could be English for you, for that matter. How do you put together these sentences? What is adverb? Whatever. After a while, you understand it. After a while, you're accustomed to it, and it's just, oh yes, everyday knowledge, and you base your life and actions on that everyday knowledge. You write a sentence that is good English. In my profession, I do all kind of things using science. That it's science-based information. So, my point is that people with these UFO kind of drone things, people had no idea of the concept of aliens up until Jules Verne, who came around writing stuff in the I think it was 1865, and I'll go over a list in just a second to sort of put it out. But he wrote that. Let's see. So Jules Verne wrote in 1865. He wrote a series of articles. It was like a serial, is what they called them, in the Strand Magazine. Then in and that was and this is From the Earth to the Moon was the name of the series. From the Earth to the Moon, 1865 serial, and it boasted a space gun that could project three people to the moon in a very, which, in other words, it was a very large cannon. At that point, people weren't using rockets. So Jules Verne writes about going to the moon, but with a very large cannon projecting you there. So, that's what people could imagine. Now, later on, H.G. Wells wrote, let's see, he wrote The First Men in the Moon, which was, I think he actually wrote that a little bit earlier. Anyway, that was 1919 is when that was made into a movie. I think he wrote that a little bit earlier in the decade, closer to 1900. And then it got made into a silent movie in 1919. The First Men in the Moon. I've read that book, and it's a little bit weird. But anyway, this is what H.G. Wells was putting out. Now, I can tell you, if you go looking into H.G. Wells, look at who these people are related to, and it becomes somewhat interesting how they gained their popularity, etc., and who they were entangled with. But that's for some other time, if I think it's worth talking about. Arthur Conan Doyle, who you know as the writer, author of Sherlock Holmes, he wrote The Lost World, and that was made into a movie in 1925, and it was about dinosaur kind of monsters, etc. And of course, I think probably everybody knows about it, whether you've seen them or not. You know about Flash Gordon, which was a serial back in 1936, a serial, and I was watching a few of those episodes just a couple of weeks ago, during Thanksgiving. We were watching those. They were so hokey, and to see the technology that is used once again when they're making these movies, they don't have our technology today. They have no concept of our technology today, and so the technology that is used in the storyline is just really silly. 1959, First Man into Space. Now that's probably a more quote-unquote modern astronaut kind of a movie. And then, of course, we know about aliens come to Earth. In the first time they come to Earth is in War of the Worlds, now that was written by H.G. Wells back in 1898. And it's made famous, of course, by Orson Welles in 1938 as a radio program when the country was petrified because they thought that this was a news report and not simply a radio program. And then as time went on, we got into the 60s, and when I was younger, there was Lost in Space, Danger Will Robinson, with that robot, which looks nothing like any robot today. It looks more like R2-D2 and sort of an amalgamation of R2-D2 and 3CPO of Star Wars. And of course, there was Star Trek, which is a groundbreaking TV series. So these are things, these are movies, these are novels, etc., that place the concepts into our head about aliens. So we have technology today that can create different kind of ships, technologies that can fly around in the air. And we've seen, there's enough that if you just go over the years, there's all kind of stuff that they've taken a shot at. You think they're showing us anything that they really want to use? By the time you and I see these technologies, what aircraft that they use, etc., by the time we see them, they've decided to not go that direction. They're not showing us anything that our military might be able to use, right? So, so my that's my point. Aliens had to be introduced to us. Interacting with aliens back in that 1903 or 1898, whatever, the H.G. Wells interaction with the people of the moon, the first men in the moon. We had to be introduced to that. That got, now, I'm not saying that all the stuff Edgar Rice Burroughs, the author of Tarzan, he wrote space-oriented kind of novels as well, so there's entertainment that we see, but that doesn't. There may be reasons that some people push certain entertainments. So everyone can see images in the clouds, and they know that it's impossible that they're there. There's no lines in the clouds. There's no boats in the clouds. Or, I'll see people's faces in the clouds or whatnot. When we see that, we're not fooled. I once saw a Florida panther cross the road. He was about 100 yards in front of me. It was one evening. It was dark. I'm driving down a causeway kind of road, and there was a creek there where he crossed. Now, when I saw him, I assumed he was a hound dog. I thought he was a weird-looking hound dog. He was sort of particularly lanky. I mean, hound dogs are lanky, but he was particularly long and lanky. And because I couldn't conceive that there'd be a Florida panther crossing the road in my neighborhood. Now, a little while later, one of my neighbors talked about, hey, there was a Florida panther down there next to the lake next to me, just, and that's not but maybe 200 yards from my house. So once I saw that, then the idea of this animal, whatever it had been, I knew it wasn't a deer. It's out in a wide pasture land kind of area. So, it wasn't a deer. I just thought it could be somebody's hound dog that was a hunting dog or whatnot, although I don't typically see those around. But I'd seen them in my lifetime. I'd seen hound dogs. And so, like a Tennessee Volunteer hound dog, right? And it wasn't until my neighbor told me he'd seen a Florida panther looking at some deer that was down on his property, and I knew there were deer all over the place. Then it hit me. That's what I saw. I saw a Florida panther, but I couldn't imagine it. Just today, I'm driving down the road. I think I see a hawk down on the ground. I saw an owl tonight go down on the ground in front of me, not more than 10 yards away, and, grab at something on the ground. But so I thought this was a hawk out in the open space along the road. And but as time went by, just seconds, I realized that's not a hawk. That's some kind of pipe sticking out of the ground. But my first impression, the thing that my mind brought to mind was, oh, it looks like a hawk. It is a hawk. Okay? So we do this. So we can see all kinds of things that we think we see. They're not real, but that's just how we see them. And what my point here is that I've been making is, obviously, some of the things we see today, if we can see aliens and alien craft and things like that, well, a lot of that is because we've been introduced to alien crafts through literature or movies, etc. Now, the thing that brought me to the reason I'm doing this video and introducing something is because I saw a video today by a guy named Chase Hughes, and he has a video called Planned Event, The Truth About New Jersey's Drone UFOs. And what he's doing in this video, I encourage you to take a look at it, is just saying, hey, look, you might not be seeing what you think you're seeing. You might not be the information that's being projected to you may not be what you think it is. And he sort of goes through how to keep a clear mind about what are we really experiencing here and why are we experiencing it. So I invite you to take a look at it. And regardless, you do need to question everything. Absolutely everything. Very little that we see. I mean, if you can't touch it yourself, then what you think you're seeing may not be what it really is. Have a good day.